Welcome to Behind the Book. It's time now for Behind the Book, hosted by Tess, Thompson, and Karen McQuestion, two authors with a passion for books, no filters, and limitless curiosity. Join them now to find out the real story behind your favorite books and authors. And now, Behind the Book.
Hello, another episode of Behind the Book. I'm Karen, and I'm here with my co-host, Tess. How are you, Tess?
I'm good. Very, very good.
Today we have my friend, Lesley Kagan. I always like to call her New York Times Bestselling author, Lesley Kagan, because once you get that little badge of honor, it stays with you forever. I was really thrilled when she agreed to speak to us. She was a fascinating interviewee with lots to say. Did I ever tell you the story of how I met Lesley, Tess?
I don't think so, no.
No, we've known each other a long time. When I had my first book out, A Scattered Life, with what is now Lake Union, she had several books out at that point. And I didn't know her at all, didn't know anyone who knew her. And I went down to a local bookstore where she was giving a reading. And afterward, I bought the book and stood in line to meet her and have her sign it. And somebody I knew, who knew both of us, said to her, "Have you met Karen McQuestion?" And she pointed right to me and said, "A Scattered Life," which was the title of my first book, which had just come out at that time. And I was just so flattered. I was like, Lesley Kagan knows who I am. And she said to me, I mean, she was busy. People were standing in line. She's like, "We have to keep in touch. We have to get together," which is something people always, always say, and they never do. But she does. She is definitely a people person. She has a very outgoing personality. She makes an effort to get to know people, which is something that I'm not a strong suit for me. I'm much more introverted and some people would say shy. I don't feel like I'm shy. I'm just reticent, I guess. You can tell from the interview that she is just a positive, bold person. Did you pick up on that?
Oh, definitely. And you can also pick up on her years of experience doing voiceover work and being a radio DJ. She's very comfortable in the interview situation and that sort of thing. So that was super fun for us.
And she had a lot of great stories, all the different jobs she's had, different famous people she's met. I think our listeners are going to really enjoy hearing what she has to say. So let's get to the interview. Lesley Kagan. Welcome to Behind the Book. I'm Karen McQuestion, here with my co-host, Tess Thompson. Today, we have New York Times bestselling author Lesley Kagan as our guest. So I'm very excited about that. I went to look at her official bio, even though I've met her, and this is the abbreviated one. Lesley Kagan is a multi-award-winning New York Times bestselling author of 9 previous novels. She's an actress, voiceover talent, sought-after speaker, child advocate, student storyteller, and writing instructor. And I want to add that her most recent novel, Every Now and Then, is the title, Every Now and Then, just came off an impressive run in the top 100 Kindle list on Amazon, which, if you're in the know, you know that there's over 4 million titles in Kindle on Amazon. So being in the top 100 is no small thing. She's the mother of 2 and grandmother of 2. She lives in a 150-year-old farmhouse in a small town in Wisconsin. And we're glad you're here with us today,
Oh
Lesley.
thank you for having me. I'm so happy to see you guys. You notice my camera's not up because I was too lazy to put like makeup on, and it's too horrifying to look at myself without
Well,
makeup.
You're
So
lucky it's a podcast, so
I
you're only
know.
going to hear us.
I know. But it is so good to see your face. I'm Tess. I'm just meeting Tess for the first time, and she's beautiful. And it's sure wonderful to see you. What do you mean you've met me?
We are friends. I didn't want to brag too much. Although, even though we're friends and we've gotten together and we talk and you're a great resource for me, I went to your website and thought, well, maybe I can pick up a little more personal tidbit to throw in there. And if anyone listening has time and wants to read the best author bio I've ever read, go to www.lesliekagan.com and read her bio. This woman has lived more in her lifetime than 10 people do. I was
Karen,
I
I'm
was
so
astounded.
tired. I'm so tired. I'm so very tired.
Oh, my mind was blown. Tess, I don't want to make you too nervous, but Lesley has interviewed Frank Zappa, Jimi Hendrix, and John Lennon. So
Oh,
what is she doing
wow.
talking to us? I don't.
I have no idea.
Oh my God. I barely remember those interviews now because of course that took place in the 60s. And we had a lot of fun in the 60s. So it's when I was a DJ on one of the very first underground rock and roll radio stations in the United States. And sort of nobody really knew all that was going to happen and how it all evolved. And yes, I was a hippie. And I got so many. I mean, I was just so fortunate. I got to meet so many incredibly cool rock and roll people and hang out with them. Probably the coolest. Well, John Lennon's pretty cool. And I only got to interview him, but Frank Zappa came over and hung out at my house for a while. And that was pretty cool. He
Oh
really,
yeah.
well, the both of us really love Coca-Cola. Well, he loved Coca-Cola. And I somewhere in the midst of all this promo material that I'd get working at the radio station had received a small little something that sort of looked like a violin case, like they use in old gangster movies to put machine guns in.
Mhm.
But mine was set up for a Coke bottle. And I got to carry it with me wherever I went. And so I gave it to Zappa, and he really loved that. And
So
yeah,
you're actually talking about the soft drink Coca-Cola. This
yes.
isn't a euphemism for drugs or anything.
No, this is actually Coca-Cola. And if you walk into my kitchen right now and open it up, you will find a huge amount of it because I need caffeine. I need it.
That's the writer's elixir, I think, is
It really
caffeine.
truly is. And I think that if you've got so much stuff to do, I think all women, honestly, I don't think men really work even close to. I'm a horrible sexist. You should know about that about me too. I don't think men work nearly half a quarter, maybe 10% as hard as women do. And I think women need caffeine just to keep up the pace of everything that we've got to get done between our jobs and our kids and just, oh, look, what is that growing on the floor in the living room? I mean, there's so much stuff you got to keep track of. So yeah, I need caffeine. I'm
Uh,
100% addicted to caffeine. Yes.
I don't want to ask too much of you because you have a lot of past experiences and careers, but would you mind telling the listeners some of the more fascinating things you've done and how you came to the writing life?
Well, I have always written. That was something that I can remember. If you have to pick a few things that you always remember as being part of your life, I would say that books and reading, horses, and writing. I can remember just even as such a little tiny kid, thinking up stories in my head. And I thought, as kids do, that this is what everybody did. And it wasn't until I was married for many years and I was laughing as I was falling asleep. And my husband turned to me and said, "What's so funny?" Of course, he would be rather sensitive about laughing when we're in bed. But I said, "Well, I just, I turned to him, I said, you know how you make up those stories right before you fall asleep and all this stuff starts happening in him and sometimes," and he just looked at me and said, "No, I don't do that." And I said, "Really?" And honestly, that was the first realization that I had that not everybody on the planet did it. So when I was little, I wrote everything. The first time I realized that I could make money doing it was when I was in fourth grade. I went to Catholic school. And we were assigned, there was this all school poetry contest. And I was in fourth grade at the time. I went up to eighth. And I wrote a poem called "I Am the Sun and I'm in the Sky." And I will even tell you the first stanza. "I'm the sun, I'm in the sky, and very soon I'll tell you why. God made me and put me there for all of you, my light to share. I glow like emeralds in the sky and maybe rubies dipped in dye. I'm very hot, as you well know. God. Now remember the God part of this poem. God made me just to glow and glow." Now, I was a pretty cagey kid. And I grew up in a little bit of a rough, blue collar neighborhood on the west side of Milwaukee. And I realized early on that if I'm at a Catholic school and anything I do, if I can mention God as much as possible, I was going to get a much better grade. I had God in the rest of that poem so much. I won. I won the all school poetry contest. And I got a silver dollar for my efforts. Now, that was a lot of money back then. And I was thrilled. And I thought, oh my goodness, there's money in this writing. Oh, um, books were everything to me. And my little stories that I made up, some I wrote down, some I didn't. My next big venture was to write a script. I was probably about in 6th grade then, for 77 Sunset Strip, which not everybody may remember, but it was a really super popular detective show on TV at the time. And I came up with a pretty darn good plot, if I do say so myself. And my mother, bless her heart, sent the script to Hollywood. And I ended up not, of course, I would wait there every Friday night in front of the television, waiting to see my story, because I didn't quite understand. I know it's so sad. It really is.
Sad.
It is sad. It's so poignant. Waiting for my story, The Cat Who Stole the Jewels. And you know what? It never happened. I did get an 8x10 glossy of Ed Cookie Burns, though. So that was pretty cool for my first foray. And you know what? They can deny it all they want, but about 2 months later, they did have an episode in which illicit diamonds were smuggled into the country in a cat's collar. Coincidence?
I think not.
Uh-huh.
No way.
Exactly correct. So I still hold it against them. So, it was a lot of writing, a lot of reading. I was a really wild kid. I was the kid that most parents did not want their children to play with. I had very little supervision and was able to get into all sorts of trouble. And I did. And the whole time, though, this is, it's the writing, it's the reading, I went on in high school to write lots of comedy sketches. And I was always the kid that people would say, oh, she's going to grow up to be a writer. Now, writing to me, that didn't seem like something humans actually did. It seemed to me a gift from the gods. And I couldn't imagine how somebody could possibly write a book. And that I thought, well, I guess they do it. I mean, look at the library. It's full of them. But that seems so beyond anything that I was capable of. And that all sort of, I got a little waylaid when my parents took me to see Robert Goulet in Camelot at the old Melody Top Theater here in Milwaukee. That guy came out and opened up the opening bars of Camelot. And that's what I wanted to do, which is what I did. I decided I would become an actress or something to do in the entertainment business. And after I graduated high school, I went to college. I majored in radio and TV. I got a job early on in radio, left college, started, to work in the entertainment business. So essentially, I've been in the entertainment business for 50 years now, which is a long time to be judged. And that's pretty much what happens. You're out there and you're open to everybody's criticism, but also all the wonderful stuff that happens when you have a job like that. After I got fired from the radio station here in Wisconsin, which is what always happens. So don't go into radio, children. And then I moved to Los Angeles and I started working all the time. And writing, I was probably writing, I was writing, recording, and producing and directing about, oh God, let me figure. I'm going to say over 1,000 commercials a year. So I had
Astounding.
It was a lot. I mean, you could
A lot.
Yeah. And it was for this huge retail record chain called Licorice Pizza, which was gigantic in California. And this would be the mid 70s. And you could not turn the radio on in California any time of the day, anywhere, without hearing, "Hi, it's Lesley from Licorice Pizza." Now that I then went on to sell records, but those were all sort of what they call co-op deals with record companies. So once again, I'm exposed to lots of rock and roll stuff and lots of companies, record companies, all sorts of stuff. Very fun. And that went on for a really long time. So I was literally writing, I was writing over 1,000 a year. So I was, I stayed there with the company for 12 years. So it's interesting. Writing copy is a really good way for writers to sort of start out in the world, because you have to, it's got to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, just the same way as novels do, only albeit a lot shorter and a lot more obnoxious generally. So commercials, and then I went on to record so many other commercials. And then I did on camera where I was selling things I got so lucky. I just walked off, I just landed in LA and just unbelievably just started booking job after job after job after job after job. So it was, ridiculous almost. It was sort of a meant to be kind of situation, I think.
You were the right person at the right place at the right time.
That's it. And I had,
And your
yeah,
hard work and persistence too.
well, yeah, Karen, and you know what? So much of the entertainment business, that end of it, the on-camera stuff, is about what you look like. And I had the greatest look for commercials. I'm good looking enough. I'm good looking enough where people don't go, "Oh my God, turn the TV off! Look at that," but not so good looking where housewives would become jealous. So I was the perfect look for commercials at that time. And I had, enough experience acting in commercials. They're funny because so much money is spent producing commercials, which is astronomical. They tend to want to work with the same people over and over and over again. They'll fly in from New York and they want to do the shoot that day, and they don't want to mess around with people they haven't worked with. So it was probably me and it seemed like 15 other people did all the commercials in the 70s. A lot of commercials. So that was great. So much fun. Then I wanted to move back here. I'm still writing. I'm still doing all the stuff. And then my husband and I decided to open up a Japanese restaurant, because that's what he was doing when I met him. And I said, yeah, sure. Okay. So we did that. And I was running down to Chicago all the time to still do commercials, still writing. And then one day I got up and I said, I think I'll write a book. When I think about it, it's so stupid. Yeah, I think I'll write a novel now. And that's what I did. I sat down and I wrote Whistling in the Dark.
I hear there's a great story behind how it became a New York Times bestseller. So I was hoping you would share that with us.
I love to tell the story because so many writers, and I'm sure this happens the same way with you, Karen, writers get in touch with me and they say, well, what should I do? And how can I do this? And how can I get a book? I feel like giving up. And I go, oh, no, you don't really want to give up. After I wrote Whistling in the Dark, I thought it was fantastic. And any writer who doesn't think that what they write is fantastic should stop writing, because what kind of idiot takes a year and a half, 2 years, however long it takes you, and write something they don't think is wonderful? You should be so madly in love with this thing that you can't stand it. And I thought it was a fantastic story. And I didn't know what to do, though. I didn't know what happened after that. And I thought, oh, okay, I better research and find out, how do you get a book published? This story could be lengthy, so I'm just going to trim it up a little. I found out you had to have a literary agent. And I thought, well, that's no problem. I've had agents my whole life. That's not a problem. And then I thought, well, how do you get an agent? Oh, you have to write something called a query letter. Oh, okay. It's like a pitch letter. Okay, got it. So I got all these lists of agents, names, and they're all in New York, 99% anyway. And you had to send this query letter and say, hey, hi, it's me, and this is what my book about. I figured, boy, my book would get sold on my first submission of agents. I think my quickest rejection was 14 seconds. I literally I'm not lying. The guy got it in 14 seconds. Like, I can even tell you the agent. I mean, that was like, oh, wow. Oh, maybe this is going to be quite as easy as I thought. Okay. Well, rejection is my life story, because when you act, the same thing happens. You're rejected so many more times. I'm big deal, little bump in the road. Well, this went on for quite a while, months. At about now people laugh when I know I was rejected 156 times for representation. That's the most I've ever heard. Now, lots of authors get rejected, and then I listen to them and they go, oh, my book was rejected like 20 times. Oh my God, you big baby. Mine was 156 times I got told by a literary agent. Now, don't forget, this is all before self-publishing was available. So you had to go through a literary agent if you wanted to get a book published. And I said, okay, great. I finally found one. He was such a sweet man. Except he kept calling, he really loved the book, except he was a little old and he kept calling it, he'd say, oh, I love this whispering in the dark. I went, oh, dang. Okay. Well, I got an agent, but I guess he's senile. Oh, that's great. Okay. Well, I don't care. I'm going with him anyway, because I'd had enough of that. And I said, so who are you thinking of selling this to and for how much money? Yet, of course, I'm thinking millions. He ends up selling the book. He goes, well, I think this is women's fiction. I said, well, what the hell's that? I had never even heard of that before. He said, well, I said, are there books that only women read? What are you talking about? And he said, well, yeah, there's books that are sort of written that women really enjoy more than men. I went, oh, well, I never heard. Okay, whatever. Okay, fine. Just do it. I never thought for a second he'd actually sell it. And he sold it to Penguin. And then he calls me to tell me, he goes, well, is this good? I said, well, how much money? When he told me, I broke out laughing. I said, oh my God, I've made more money working as a waitress for tips in my restaurant than what they want to pay me. Well, as time went on, I took it, of course. I said, as time went on, I started to realize, I think they bought it as a tax write-off. That was the first thought that came to my mind. They bought this book just because for a tax write-off. That's all this is. And and so then I kind of almost in a way, I mean, it takes such a long time before a book is sold, before it is published, like a year. I kind of just put it out of my mind, I went, okay, I did that. Good girl. That was a good job. You did it. You followed it. Great. Well, then about 3 months before the book is about to be released, I hear from, my editor at Penguin, and she said, this is sort of interesting. Actually, I went out to dinner with her. She was in Madison for BoucherCon. And I said, I really love independent bookstores. Love them, love them, love them. And my biggest dream for all of this, I didn't even care how many I sold. I just wanted to get on the ABA list, for books picked. And for that
And I'm
month.
just going to interrupt for a second. We should tell people ABA stands for American Booksellers Association.
Right. And then every month they pick, I think they've lengthened it. Now, it wasn't called that back then. It's called the Indie Next List now. I can't remember what it was called back then. But every month they pick 20 or 15 books, I think, that they think are special and fantastic. Now, from what I've read lately, Karen, you tell me if this is correct, because you are so on top of all this. I've heard that about 20,000 books are published a month.
I can't speak to that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
I heard that figure at one time, and I thought, well, okay, that's a lot. Okay. But this is, if I could just have this, that would be so cool. And I didn't really understand what that meant or how many people or the politics behind it. And there are politics that are involved in these books getting selected. But unbelievably, I didn't get picked for that list, but I did get picked for something weird else that they had that made the book special in the Midwest. And my agent was floored. I mean, floored. She said, I can't believe this. I said, what? She said, this is strange. Well, this filled me with a lot of confidence, of course. There's my editor saying, geez, this is really weird. And I said, okay. Well, actually, I had asked her this at lunch, and she get on the list, and she actually choked on a roll. That's how ridiculous it sounded to her. And I thought I could do the Heimlich maneuver on her, but I just might not. I felt so bad driving home. I went, okay, well, there goes that dream. But then all this stuff started happening. And then I got selected for this other program. And then the book comes out, and people just go crazy for this book. My little book, it just goes nuts. It's just selling so fast that they can't barely keep up with printing it. And I'm going, well, this is amazing. It ended up becoming a New York Times bestseller. And of course, this would always be preceded by a phone call from my editor saying, this is really weird. I can't believe this is happening. And I went, okay, great. And then it won the American Booksellers in the Midwest Booksellers Association Honor Award. I mean, it just kept getting all of these things. And now it is it's still in its 19th printing. So for it to go, for everybody who wants to give up, you got to understand that most of the people in publishing have no clue as to what they're doing exactly. And they don't know what is going to sell and what isn't. And, literary agents are not the end all and be all. And you have to have such faith. You have to believe in your book. That's the bottom line of all of it. I mean, if I had given up after number 143, for instance, or 155, my little story would have never come out in the world. And I still get emails at least a couple of weeks saying how much they love that book. And it's really super gratifying. I mean, I gotta say, it's a pretty big moment for me, because when you're told that many times this book sucks, it feels pretty good, when people say otherwise.
You know what I love about that story is that it was not positioned to become a huge seller.
Not at all.
I mean, they put it out, they marketed it, but nobody said, let's
but did
make this
they?
thing soar. No.
But
Well,
did
I don't know.
they?
I'm assuming they did. But
No, they didn't. Okay.
It was readers. It was word of mouth. It was booksellers. It was librarians. It was the people had spoken. And that is wonderful.
Yeah, it really, really was. It was, I mean, I put a lot of it, it really was the indie booksellers, quite honestly. There was an indie bookseller up in Michigan by the name of Jill Miner, who just got on it. And she called our sales rep, my sales rep, her sales rep at Penguin, and said, this is going to sell a ton. And of course, he said something like, well, that's weird. Yeah, she said, believe me. And then word got out amongst the indie booksellers. And then the next month, my next book, Land of 100 Wonders, landed on the ABA list. And I think 4 or 5 of them eventually did. But
So how many total have you written so far?
This is Every Now and Then is my 9th.
And which one's your favorite? I always have to ask that. Do you have a favorite?
That's so impossible to answer. It just is.
It is.
Love them all so much. I mean, and I think that at different times I've loved one more than others, but I guess, I really love my new one, Every Now and Then, a lot. But I also love whistling, just because of, it sort of opened everything up. And I love the girls so much. I love to write that coming of age mystery sort of thing. And both of these stories, I think, are a little reminiscent of each other, Whistling and Every Now and Then.
If somebody's unfamiliar with your catalog, where should they start?
I would think, and I think Karen would agree with this. I'm sure she hasn't read all my books, but I would say Whistling. I think Whistling in the Dark does sort of set the general feel of things that are important to me. I've written so many, the themes in my novels always sort of remain somewhat the same, in the sense that it's a story about kids generally trying to figure out just what the hell is going on, and how to interpret so many of the things that they're seeing and perceiving, make sense of life and make sense of the world. And then usually something really scary happens in the books. There's a murder or there's something else that's going on that throws them out of their norm and sort of pushes them into figuring out, exactly what they're made out of.
I was telling Tess when we talked about having you on as a guest that I said, "Oh, Lesley Kagan knows everybody. She knows agents, she knows editors, or she at least knows someone who knows them or knows a little tidbit. And you know other authors and booksellers and librarians. But because you've had all this experience in so many years, how would you say the publishing world has changed since you started out?"
Oh my God. I'm still really good friends with my Penguin rep, Brian Wilson in Chicago. And I'm still published by Penguin still. But um we were talking about this the other day. I mean, we had so much fun back in those days. I mean, first of all, there were tours, and there's not very many tours anymore where you go on and get book tour and you get to meet everybody. I mean, of course, because of COVID, we don't get to meet anybody. But back then, when a book started to take off, they'd send you on tour and you got to travel the country. That only happens now for the really, really huge booksellers or big authors now. But that was so much fun. And we just had a great time. I mean, it was just fun. And so much of publishing back then, it mattered what kind of book you wrote. They actually cared about the quality of writing and novels. I don't think that's true so much anymore. And I'll give you a really interesting example. I submitted, trying to think of which book it was. It was some book. And they said, well, I think it was Every Now and Then. They said, well, we'll have to, I gave it to my agent. The agent said, okay, well, we'll have to see what the sales department thinks at Penguin. I said, excuse me? What do you mean? Did you mean editor? I thought he meant editor. I thought, well, he trying to find an editor that he thought would click with the story. He said, oh no, see, what happens now is that the sales team has to decide which books get published. And that's another thing I really want writers to understand, that when they get rejected or when they don't get by publishers or represented by agents, it has very, 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 very little to do with their writing ability. It has everything to do with their platforms, who they are, what connections they have, and whether or not how much money the publishers can make. And I get that. I mean, it is a business, but I've seen that narrow over the years till it's to the point almost it's kind of silly, actually. I mean, if you're famous, you can get a book deal. If you're not famous, it's much harder to get a book deal. It also helps now. I've noticed a huge push on the MFA programs now. A lot of people want to see an MFA after an author's name, and they want that sort of thing. It gives them more credibility. And of course, I'm not talking about all houses, but a lot of the houses do. I'm talking about the bigger ones. And of course, at the end of, it sort of feels like the end of the Monopoly game. A lot of the big houses now, we've whittled down into just a couple. So that doesn't give you a lot of different places to go to sell a book. And then, of course, Amazon came onto the scene, which Karen can talk to, and that changed everything. Once people were able to self-publish, everybody in the world wrote a book. And while there are, I think on the early days, and you can speak to this, Karen, I think that it worked out incredibly well. And I think there's so many pluses for self-publishing. But back then, not so much now.
That's correct. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Right. And why don't you say what you think about that? Because it's huge.
Well, when you talk about books self-publishing, you probably remember this, Lesley. There was a huge stigma. It was people would
Yes.
be like, "Oh, he self-published his book." Like it was garbage. It was, you don't want to buy that. It was horrible. He was desperate. It's not ready for prime time. And when I self-published on Kindle in 2009, I started making sales and people were reviewing it, and I couldn't believe how well it was doing. My books, I uploaded 6 initially that had been languishing, that nobody had wanted to publish. And I even had been agented, and the agents couldn't, to 2 different agents at 2 different times and they couldn't sell the books that they represented. So I told other people, like other friends who are writers, you should do this. And a lot of them were a little snooty about it. They were like, no, I'd rather wait and do it the right way. And I thought, well, I don't know. I have readers and I'm making some money. And what's the right way? So I do think that we've left that behind, and I do think it was easier to do well in the early days because there was less competition. But, the people who are still staying in the game and producing more books and are smart about marketing, there's still opportunities there. It's definitely different. Would you agree with that, Leslie?
I would say that with self-publishing now, it has to be a miracle for a book to do well. Truly a miracle. It's because partially, I mean, when there were just the agents and the publishers, there was a gatekeeper. There was somebody who would say, okay, we can only allow a certain amount of books to be published per year. Well, when self-publishing came on, everybody felt, and this is funny, I noticed this when I was an actress too, and a voice actress in particular. People think if they can talk, they can read audiobooks, for instance, or they can do commercials. It's a skill set. And
Mhm.
so I think with self-publishing, people thought, well, I'll just get a book up there and then it'll sell. And that's not what happens. I think now, and let's just take somebody right now who said today, I'm going to self-publish this. I think they would be horribly disappointed, horribly, horribly disappointed. There's just because when it gets down to it now, these days, marketing is everything in the book industry. Without understanding marketing or what you can do, and in some ways, marketing is limited. I mean, Karen honestly is a genius. I mean, I bow to her
Listen to her.
oh my
Oh,
God. I bow to her when it comes to understanding book marketing. She says stuff sometimes to me and she says, well, you just, it's just like this. And I go, oh my God, I got to take a nap. I mean, I don't have a clue half the time what she's even talking about. But this is how smart she played it. I mean, I've watched her from the very beginning, from her beginnings as really, she's being incredibly honest, as the first Amazon phenom, and then the years after that, and how she picked up on the fact of what she might need to do at this point and this point. People don't understand that as writers, you really have to put on a business cap at some point.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
right. And
Mhm.
you have to understand this stuff. Now, unfortunately, some of us just are, as I said to Kieran the other day, oh, gee, I guess it's true. You really can't teach old dogs new tricks because I have no idea what you're talking about. So I think that if people know that from the beginning, and say, okay, so I guess in order for this to happen, and if I expect a career out of this, not just a one-shot book, but a career, I better get extremely knowledgeable about the marketing aspects of books. And that's the whole deal now. It's whoever yells the loudest sells the most books. Right? Yes, that's right, Lesley. Yeah.
I can't believe you're giving me all these compliments. We're supposed to be interviewing you, Leslie. You're making me feel a little sheepish, but thank you. That's
Well,
so kind of you.
and it's so 100% true. You know me well enough to know that I don't say anything that I don't really believe. So I think, yeah, I mean, I'm in awe. I am. And I think that how smart you have to be these days for a book to be successful. I mean, I look at these multi-million-dollar deals. It was interesting. There's this new book coming out written by a woman who was a flight attendant. I don't know if you've seen the brouhaha about that book. But right now, thrillers and suspense novels. And that's the other thing too. People have to understand, maybe they want to write a quiet, beautiful, literary, poetic almost book these days. I mean, you're going to have a hard time selling a book like that. As of right now, and Karen, you can speak to this as well, you better be writing a thriller or a suspense novel.
I think that's always been the case, though. Don't you think there've always been trends in publishing? They want
Yes.
vampires or they want, whatever, you know.
Yeah, I do. But I think that when you say changes, I think that's even more pronounced now. That very specifically, and of course it's summer. So thrillers and suspense novels always do incredibly well during the summer months, with literary fiction tending to take off more in September. But yeah, I get very interested in studying how things work and why things work. And I've been watching publishing for a pretty long time now. And those are the trends now that I see. Highly plotted books, But then every once in a while something will pop up where that's really, really gorgeous and much more character driven. And so then I think, oh, okay, well, all right. Yeah, that's still happening too. So yeah, I mean, I think people's attention spans have grown with the advent of the internet, much shorter, and they like stuff that they can understand quickly and moves quickly, and time.
I would agree completely with that. Well, to get back to the personal questions, did you
Yeah.
have something for Lesley, Tess?
Yeah, I was curious about your writing space. Do you have a place you always write in, or are you kind of one of these people who writes wherever you are in the house?
No, I have friends who can do that. I mean, I was at a conference once, and this other writer I know whipped out a laptop, and I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Oh, I'm writing. I've got that deadline." I went, "You're writing your novel here in the lobby of the hotel?" I was like, "Oh my God, what's wrong with you?" I was stunned. I am so regimented. I get up every day at 5. I write for 4 to 5 hours every single day. I sit at my desk. I have to wear this old bed jacket that I bought that is literally falling apart at the seams. And then I have to make like 15 cups of tea and then take my dog out. And then I write. And then when I'm done, I'm done. And that's it for me for the rest of the day. I don't really think about my stories after that. I go into this world, and in this world, I get to write stuff and be creative, and I'm in my story. But after that, I don't, people will, do you worry about, I go, no, I don't. I leave that up to my subconscious, because I believe that that's where all my stories are coming from. And I pick early in the morning. I know some people are better late at night, but I think it's super important that we all figure out. And this is why I also mentor writers, and I had somebody approach me the other day, and I asked him about when is he writing. He said, "Oh, I went, no, I don't. That's why I asked. Like what?" He said, "Well, I just sort of write like what you said, Tess, here and there." And I went, "Oh no, stop that immediately." I said, "You have to have a time every day that you write, because writing, that part of your brain that creates the creative part, it then knows, oh, this is what we're doing now. This is what we do every day. We open up and we write a fun story. Yay. And it's accessible. You start, messing around with that process. And I think everybody's process is different. Obviously, that process works for some people in hotel lobbies. How? I don't know. But for me, and what I always recommend is one of the very first things when writers ask me is write every single day. I don't care how long, just write every single day. You have to let your whole creative thing know that, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. So fire yourselves up. I got to be at my desk in front of my ancient desktop computer that I'm waiting any second now to just disintegrate into nothingness because I'm too scared to get a new one.
Oh, that sounds like me. I get used to something and I'm like, I don't even want to get a new car. I just figured out how to get the rear windshield wiper to work. I'm like, you know what? I've got this now. So
yeah, forget it. You're going to have to pry this out of my cold, dead hands. No way am I like upgrading to, what is it now? Windows 9000?
I'm
No.
not sure.
Yeah. I mean, for just to figure that stuff out is like, I cry. I mean, if my computer starts acting weird, I just freak out, and I have this person who comes and I go, just do something, just make it stop.
Save it.
I'm just saving like every 5 minutes on top of it. So no, I'm very, very regimented, Tess, to my very specific place, time, what I'm wearing, what I'm drinking. It's got to all be the same. I don't get great ideas like when I'm walking around. Sometimes once I stop and I go up to the shower, I will then have additional information appear in my mind. And for a long time, until I thought of like getting a tape recorder or something, I would run naked through the house back down to my computer. Then by popular demand, I stopped that. So, yeah.
Oh, man. Hey, Leslie, I know you are very close with your daughter. Does she read your book? Do other people or books? Has she read them? Do other people read in your family read your books?
I think they act like they have, but I don't think they have. I really don't. I think they act like oh mom, that was so good. We're so proud of you. And you were just talking about the Amazon thing the other day. I mean, it was really fortunate that the book skyrocketed up the Amazon chart. And I had my little grandson Charlie with me yesterday or Saturday, whenever that happened. And I said, Charlie, come here. I want to show you something, because he understands how things work in the book world, I think, better than his mother, my daughter, does. And I said, Charlie, look at this. I said, there's like 1 million books on Amazon. Look at this. Look where Gigi is. And his eyes got real big and he said, I am so proud of you, Gigi. And
Aw.
that sort of did it for me. I sort of went, okay, I got the family thing. That's good. But as far as anybody else in my family reading them, honestly, I think they're lying to me. I just think they say, oh, because I go, hey, remember that part in Land of 100 Wonders where Gibby, and they get this like blank look on their faces. Like, did you write a book called Land of 100 Wonders? It's hilarious to me. My feelings are not hurt in any way, shape, or form. They just think of me as mom, and it's like, I think I'll have to wait until I'm dead. And then they'll all get the books out and go, oh, we should really read these because we feel guilty. We didn't read them when she was alive. So I'm counting on that.
All right. So, what kind of books do you enjoy reading?
Yeah, I'm all over the place. I'll tell you what I like, what I look for. I look for something really fresh, something that isn't the same old formulaic stuff. I'm right now reading a book called The Plot, which is highly successful right now, a very hot book. And just enjoying it so much because it's a really, really different way to go about a story. Um, and I love that. And then I have my old favorites that I always read. I love Louise Penny's Inspector Gamache series. So I always get excited about that. And I'm pretty much all over the place. There are just genres that I don't read at all. I don't read romance, and I don't really read science fiction. But other than that, I'm pretty open to. Of course, I love coming of age stories, probably most of all. But other than that, just something that I usually know, and I'm sure as writers, you guys can do the same thing. But after the first page, I know if I'm going to like a book or not. These people astound me who say, oh, well, I read the first 100 pages and then I realized I didn't like it. Well, no, that doesn't work that way for me. I know really fast if somebody's going to be appealing to me or not. I mean, it's sort of like taking a bite of food. Hey, you're either going to like raw fish or you're not. It's not like you're going to eat a bunch of raw fish and go, I guess I really do like this. There's so many books out there and it's such an individual thing about what appeals to you at what time and why and what speaks to you and what doesn't. And I try to leave myself pretty open to, I get a lot of referrals from other people, when I'll say, what are you reading? And then they'll tell me, and especially if it's from people that, I love or people that I respect, I think, oh, okay, I'm going to try that, and have the chance to fall in love with somebody new. But, I still have all my favorites too.
Well, one of our questions that we always ask authors is, and I think I know the answer to this because of something you said a little earlier, but do you have any doubts about a book, either when you're writing it or after you finish?
No, I don't. I don't. I love them so much and I'm so into it. And it feels also real and genuine to me. What I do get doubts about is after I've finished the book, because I know that there's certain algorithms and things like that, whether or not the book will be published. And that's when the doubt will set in, where I'll think, I don't know. This book is kind of weird or it's pretty unusual. And I'm not sure that publishers are going to find a place for it or a slot. And then I'll get doubts. Right now, I'm trying to write an upper middle grade book. This is really hard for me It's different, and yet the same as my other writings. I found that I got really into middle grade fiction. I love yours, Karen, and I think
Oh,
maybe
thank
yours
you.
might even been what kind of got me going. I can remember the graphic. What was the name of that with that cool graphic? Your very first one.
Oh, are you thinking of Grimhouse?
Yes, I'm thinking of Grimhouse. I
You
can
know why
remember.
you're thinking of Grimhouse is because your granddaughter is named Hadley,
Yes,
and I
yes.
borrowed her name for the main character.
I gotta tell her that. She's
Yeah.
really gonna love that. Yeah, and I remember thinking, oh, this is cool. Once again, Karen is doing something that's extremely cooler than I am. Huh. Okay, I gotta see what this is about. And I started reading a bunch of middle grade fiction, which I happen to love. And I'm reading this stuff. I'm going, oh, I see. I see how they do this, sort of, kind of. Can I do something like that? And I really found after this year of COVID, death is not covered very much in children's stories. And it's of the utmost importance. I'm a child advocate. I'm very involved with kids. And I find that we have to make sure that children are ready for when people that they love pass. And so few of them are, which can turn this sad situation into something traumatic. We really need to be able to address death, to be able to be open with it more, to be able to talk about it, to discuss what our beliefs are with people and children, and to feel comfortable. I think everybody gets so frightened and they end up thinking, gosh, I just don't want to talk about this to my kids. And we don't want to scare them. Well, believe me, they already know. I mean, they know so much. And the only really scary part of that about that is not quite understanding how everything works. And so this book that I've written, I really have gotten the original idea from a novella I wrote a bunch of years ago called The Undertaking of Tess. And it's about the story about, and this happened to me as a child. My father died when I was quite young. And instead of addressing, his death or telling us about it, we weren't allowed at his funeral. And he'd gone to a Braves game and never came home. He died in a car crash. And after that, it was as he didn't even exist. My mother took all of his pictures, and it was as if it had never happened. And I think the thinking back in those days was, we don't want to discuss this. We need to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and keep on going. That is the recipe for disaster. And I think that I know so many people have lost loved ones this year, and I know so many of them are children. And I think it's important to discuss some way of framing death and what might happen and what could happen. And is there a life beyond? And even just the basic fundamentals of what happens, what is a funeral and what is a burial and how does that work?
Oh,
Do we
I
go?
agree completely. How old were you when your father passed away?
I was almost 5. And it changed my entire life. It changed who I was as a child. And it changed how safe I felt in the world, and which wasn't very. And then not understanding anything about how, well, wait, what happened? And I think this is still really prevalent. I'm starting to see more and more now, like just things where people are starting to say and talk about afterlife and to talk about experiences that they've had. And a lot of what happens to the Delaney sisters in this story is, it's how to come to grips with when you lose somebody who is the most important person to you in the world. And yet you do have to keep living. The little girl, the main character in the novel, Teddy, she has to take care of her younger sister because her mother is fallen apart. And so she needs, and yet she feels enormous guilt because she was out on the boat the day that her father drowned, and she wasn't able to do anything to save him. So there's the stuff that goes on in kids. I mean, people go, oh, kids don't think about that. So kids are so complicated and they think about so many things. And I don't think that this particular novel, Saving the Delaney Sisters, is more for the upper middle grade, because there seemed to me a dearth between real middle grade stuff, adventure stuff, and then they go right into young adult novels, which are like, oh my God. People are having sex and they're doing drugs and they're chasing people down. I mean, it's just so intense. It didn't seem like there was a bridge in between there. At least I'm ignorant of a lot of the books who provide that bridge. And I thought, I think this book will work. Maybe. I love it. I don't know if publishers will feel the same way. So that's where the doubt does come in, Karen. Like, I don't know.
It seems to me, Lo, you kind of created your own niche where there's a need there, and what you've written addresses the need. I hope it does well. I really do. It sounds fabulous.
Thank you. I hope so too. I mean, first of all, we have to see if somebody, will publish it and say, and the language is a little more complex than in your typical middle grade reader. But yet I see my grandson at 11. I mean, he's pretty savvy. He's a pretty good reader, and he understands a lot of concepts. And he's certainly aware of death, and yet it's still very mysterious. I mean, he asked his mother yesterday, "You aren't going to die, are you? What would happen if you did?" And it doesn't take much for kids' brains to start going in that direction, where they start to understand the frailty of life. Somebody else's mother or father, could die, or they see it on a TV show, and then you need to be able to get that out in the open so they can talk about it. Otherwise, it can get scary, and it can become so scary that it starts coming out in different ways. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'm writing it with a good and pure heart, with hope that it can affect and just make some little reader out there feel not so alone. Because if I had to pick a bottom line, that's what I would say why I read books, for somebody to pick up one of my stories and feel connected to my characters and feel less alone.
I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I felt very alone as a child, and very different, and very not part of things. And I always just didn't quite understand why, and I still don't actually. And I just wanted to feel close to somebody and understand how I could do that, or just say, oh, they're having the same experiences as me. So that gives us, there's a connection. Yeah, to feel a connection of some kind.
Well, I think that's what we felt when we were kids. I can remember that first time I read a sentence or something and I thought, oh, that's just like me. I'm understood, and I'm not alone. So I think that's exactly right.
Yeah. Which book was that?
I'm sure it was one of the Little House books.
Yes. Okay. I know a lot of people felt that I think Wilder had this way of pulling readers in, I think, that really made them feel like, oh, she's like a little girl, but that was a little girl a long time ago. And, oh, that's, to have that feel of, oh, okay, I understand how that character is feeling.
All right. Well, we have taken up quite a bit of your time already.
And
we
so
love all your
fun.
stories, but we probably should get wrapped up here. But we have some fun extra questions that we like to ask at the end.
Okay.
Kind of a rapid fire type of thing. So
all right.
I'll start here. What is one food that will never get past your lips?
Liver.
Same. Who would you want? Who would you want to play you in a movie?
Frances McDormand.
Good one.
Yeah. That is a good one. Yeah. What superpower would you pick given the opportunity?
I really love the idea of invisibility, because I like to spy on people. But if it was like anything, what I'd like to do is have the power to take away stupid and make everybody a lot smarter and kinder. I would like to be the kindness person. Just sprinkle this on people. They don't have to be kind all the time. They just have to be kind like a lot of the time. Yes.
80-20. The
80-20, right? 80-20.
Yeah. All right. At the end of your life, what do you hope you'll have accomplished?
That my children will feel that they were loved and taken care of, and that they were the most important thing to me.
What is the worst job you've ever had?
Cleaning eyeglasses at House of Vision. That was a terrible job. It was like I made $2 an hour. It was the worst. Oh my God.
If you could instantly become an expert in something, what would it be?
I would love to know how to fix cars. I'd like to have something practical like that. So when I get so frustrated, or computers. Maybe that's what we should do, Karen.
That's what we should do.
Okay. I'd like to know how to fix computers. Okay.
What's your favorite scent?
Fresh cut grass.
What is the most terrifying thing you've ever done?
Every day. Every day is terrifying to me. I can't pick one thing. Every day is terrifying to me. I am about to do something is really scaring me so badly. I'm about to get on an airplane for the first time since all of this, which is, horrifying to me. Horrifying. And then, so that's scaring me. And then once we land, we're going to like Las Vegas, which is 100 times scarier than going anywhere else. And then when we land, we're going into a helicopter for a 4-hour flight through the Grand Canyon. These are all fear-inducing things. And so, yeah, currently right now, that's the thing I'm the most frightened of. So, yeah, but ask me tomorrow, there'll be something else. So,
when people pronounce words incorrectly, do you let them know?
No, I don't. I mean, although it depends. If it's my daughter or somebody who, probably my daughter, I would, or my little grandchildren, but not just a regular person. I don't want people to feel embarrassed. I mean, and let them at least, that's okay. Let somebody else tell them that, no, that's not how you say that word. No, that's not even a word, by the way. You just think it's a word, but nah, I'm not going to be the one. I lay enough bad stuff on people. No, yeah, that particular one I leave to someone else.
If you could live your life over again, would you want to?
An edited version. I'd read the edited version. Oh,
that's a great answer.
Yeah.
Perfect.
A highly edited version. Yeah. And yeah, this time I would take out, all I won't swear. I mean, I'm sure Karen is incredibly proud of me for not swearing this entire time.
I am.
Yeah. I have a sign in front of me that says, Lesley, now don't swear. Because I do have the mouth of a sailor, but I would take out all the not nice people that I've spent time with in my life, and any other stuff that just caused me and still causes me, I figure, too much pain for, that is, I wouldn't want people to have to go through. So yeah, I would do the highly edited version that involves horses and reading and grandchildren and fields of flowers. And just that version. I'm totally good with that. I don't need to have conflict in my life story.
Unlike fiction, we don't need conflict, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you joined us today, Lesley, and thank you for taking the time, and loved hearing your stories.
Oh, you guys are great. This is wonderful. Tessa, it was great to meet you. And
you too.
And, so great. Karen, you look fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. You good. Hey, you look at that. You took a compliment nicely.
I'm getting better.
Yeah. We're recording.
Yeah. She'll probably make the guy cut it out, Okay. So you guys, this was so much fun. I enjoyed it so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, Lesley.
You guys too. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Behind the Book, brought to you by authors Tess Thompson and Karen McQuestion. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and post a question in the comment section. This has been Behind the Book.